Um, Susie is from Tahoe Food Hub, and Tracy is from Capay Valley Farm Store. These are both in California, and they are both operating hubs that are a little larger than most of the hubs in our group. And the reason I thought that it would be really cool to have them here is, one, because don't we all want to meet other food, cool food hub folks that we've never met before? But two, because they've been either in operation a little bit longer or they've grown to a little bit larger state, they're living, a lot of our hub's future. And I think it's really cool that we have the opportunity to learn from these two. And Susie and Tracy, I'm not sure which one wants to go first. I'm sorry we didn't talk about that when we talked last week. Does either one of you have a burning desire to be the first presenter?
I'll go.
Awesome. And then you also had a presentation, is that correct?
A little one, yeah.
A little one. All right. So Shannon, if you can do your magic to make that possible, that would be amazing.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. So yeah, I'm Susie with Tahoe Food Hub. I'm the founder, now former executive director. In the last 6 months, I've recently stepped down to create space for the next generation of food hubbers. I'll always be involved. It's, once you birth a food hub, you don't really ever let it go. Sydney provided a series of questions. I've kind of moved them around to kind of create more of a story. Currently, right now, we're in a 4,000 square foot warehouse, kind of in an industrial park that our local airport has. Most of it taken up by an 1,800 square foot, 2 walk-in coolers and a freezer. At first, it would seem like we were never going to utilize that, but once the pandemic hit, we were fully using those to their fullest capacity. But to get to that scale, it took 7 years. Again, not sure what all of your guys' origin stories are, but it was me and my refrigerated van, and then a shared space in a bakery, and then a borrowed walk-in cooler at a ski resort. And then we got, after 2.5 years, we got our first, it was in at the bottom of a ski hill, like a ski area, little shopping mall strip, and it had a storefront. So our first warehouse also became our first kind of retail shop. And we were there for 3 or 4 years. And we knew pretty much right away we were going to outgrow that pretty quickly and started looking. And in 2019, we moved into, took a huge step forward. We went from 1,200 square feet to, 4,000 square feet. So it was a pretty big leap. And surprisingly, that year, sales were kind of down. Our retail shop was starting to get bigger because it was closer to town. It was bigger, had more to offer, but wholesale was actually starting to take a dip. But obviously the pandemic kind of turned that all around. So then just, what our food hub does, obviously, well, we're a nonprofit food hub, and we'll get to that with our programs and our goals. But our earned income model, which provides the revenue and proceeds for those programs, we have 3 marketplaces. We've got our wholesale, which was how we started, and that was pretty much it for the first 2 years. Then when we moved into that first location, we added our retail space. Originally it was called the Farm Shop. I asked, a little nod to Tracy. I actually called your founder and I want to name our retail shop the Farm Shop. Is that okay? And he's like, well, I don't have any copyrights on that. So, but then when we did close it during the pandemic for obvious reasons. When we reopened it, rebranded it the pharmacy, not that we, of course, coined that term or anything, but I've always liked it. Food is medicine, as we all know. So 2019, we had just wholesale and the retail stand. We had launched our Harvest to Order program, which was our online market for consumers. It was always, we had a buying club, which offered wholesale prices to people who wanted to access, bulk, get good prices in bulk. But people were like, oh, that's too much for me. Can you offer anything just for general consumers that we could order online? And so it was like 2 years incubation, and we launched in the summer of 29 harvest to order, and it kind of gimped along, you know, and I'm really glad we have, whether it was foresight or not, that there was, you know, there was a meteor about to strike. But it was ready and in place when the pandemic hit, which was nice. Unlike probably a lot of hubs, if you were maybe just wholesale, you had to kind of scramble and figure out how to pivot. I mean, we are still pivoting, don't get me wrong. You know, it was drinking from the fire hose and how to grow that fast, because that harvest order program went from 40 customers, which took 6 or 8 months to get to 100 customers. I mean, we all have a similar story, to 100 customers in 1 week, to 200, 300. I mean, it was just, you know, gangbusters. So, you know, those 3 marketplaces, you know, provide this revenue for our earned income model that we then put into our programs. Our goals are what drive our programs. Our goals are to support local farms, increase access to local food, and mitigate climate change. That last one is kind of really for me, which is where I started. When I learned about mycorrhizal fungi, you know, I had to put a dot on a piece of paper and where everything spiraled out from there. It was learning about that amazing biology happening in the soil and all the amazing things that come from that, like, you know, high yields and healthy food, and it's good for the planet and the soil. And it's like, why are we all not farming this way? And it was like, how can we get more farms farming this way? And a few years later, you know, learning about food hubs and then wanting to start our own. North Lake Tahoe is not an agricultural area, but we obviously have access to local food year round. So we're pretty fortunate in that regards. Within 60 miles, even in the wintertime, we have food being grown. So a lot of that last goal has been a driver for a lot of what we've done, is to provide a marketplace for farms using those regenerative farming practices that can sequester carbon in the soil. So those goals then drive our programs, which we have 3. One is our Farmer Resiliency Fund, which provides financial assistance to farmers, whether they're maybe transitioning to organic, recovering from drought or wildfire, infrastructure improvements, you know, whatever we can do to you know, increase and enhance their resiliency. Our Giving Box program, also a program like Harvest Order that had started before the pandemic, a way to ensure, you know, a lot of relief, hunger relief programs, and we're actually, our neighbor is our local food pantry, but it's a lot of processed foods, you know, food that's getting older, it's not holding up as well, it's processed, it's not organic. So we wanted to, you know, address that and enable and ensure that people who were in need had access to fresh local food. We want to address a lot of the dietary concerns in this country. Those at most at risk need the most access to those foods. So we started, you know, collecting donations for it, and, you know, enough where we could do 5 boxes a week. Same thing. Then the pandemic hit and everyone was unemployed. People heard about our program, they wanted to donate to it, and they wanted to participate in it, depending on what end of the spectrum they were on. And so that during the pandemic for about 6 months was like 180 boxes. And we're down to, as we've seen, there's a new demographic of food insecure people. That need has persisted, and we still continue to donate around 60 to 90 boxes a week, partnering with our school district through, like many of yours, our school district created a food pantry kind of, you know, drive-through for kids and free and reduced lunches, and then outreaching to churches. They had, you know, people within their congregations that were in need, or local community members. Then our third program, which is kind of kicking off this week, we have a big fundraiser on Thursday, the Food Shed Dinner, to launch our Sierra Growing Classroom. This program actually kind of precedes the Food Hub. Even before I started the Food Hub, wanted to build what is called a growing dome, which is a geodesic greenhouse. And, but, you know, the town, you would think with town of Truckee, we were trying to build like, you know, the Taj Mahal or something like that, because we've had so many roadblocks along the way, but we've finally been approved to build one at our regional park. So we're really excited and to have that happen. And it'll be an year-round education garden for students in our community. You know, teaching them about local food and the importance of regenerative farming practices to sequester carbon. You know, a lot of kids are concerned about climate change and looking at their future and feeling pretty defeated. And hopefully by getting their hands in the soil, they can kind of see how they can start to make a difference. So kind of lightning round here of other items. Our farms are mostly within 100 miles. We do partner with Capay Valley Farm Shop, which is probably more like 150 miles, but we distribute just primarily to North Lake Tahoe. So that's going to be, if you look at the Lake of Tahoe, we're the northwest corner. So it'd be like Tahoe City, Truckee, up to Incline Village. And our farms are like primarily Sierra Foothills, some in Northern Nevada. As I mentioned, the pandemic, like for all of us, was a big growth spurt. So we probably grew 15 to 20% from when we launched in 2013. So I took 2 years to kind of develop the whole thing, like learn about food hubs, learn about food systems, do the research, get everything in place. And then when we launched in June of 2013 till about 2020, it was 15 to 20% growth, pretty steady. $700,000 is where we were. But by the pandemic, we went to 1.6 million, in under a year. So it was, pretty significant. That has definitely dropped. We'll probably hopefully still hit 1.2 or 1.3. So it still, slingshot us out into the stratosphere. But it's, we can't sit back. We got to really stay active and engaged in how we can maintain and retain, recover, lost customers, all those things. Before the pandemic, we probably had 2 full-time staff and 6 part-time. During the pandemic, 5 full-time and 8 to 10 part-time. And that's still about the same. I would say 5 full-time, 8 part-time. And as far as how we stay true to our mission, it's really constant feedback loop to those core values. Is what we want to do, meeting, supporting local farms, increasing the access or mitigating climate change. And if it doesn't, then we maybe don't have the capacity to do that. So before I wrap up and hand this off to Tracy, I'm going to do you need to give me this? Can I share the screen, Sydney?
Yeah, you can go ahead and share. Susie, you should be able to. Yep, we see Yuri.
All right, there's our logo. I kind of, joke that, I created this logo in a class I was taking, and I was like, it's obviously, hopefully you can recognize it. Some people are like, well, I don't get it. What's your logo? I'm like, it's Lake Tahoe. It's turned into a vegetable. Come on. So I feel like once I had this logo, I was like, okay, I have to build a food hub because this logo is awesome. And then this was is our Harvest to Order logo. It's so fresh. He's literally picking out of the back of his truck. Can't really do what we do without these guys. We've done a series of professional photo shoots with our farmers so we can share those stories through social media. And this is something I'm most proud of. This is our newest artwork, and one of the things I wanted to make sure I got to show. As a nonprofit food hub, we are constantly asked, I'll be giving a presentation, just feeling like I'm nailing it. I'm like, oh God, these people get it. They understand the value, the community benefit, what our programs do. And then someone raises their hand and they're like, I don't understand how you're a nonprofit if you're buying and selling food. And I'm just like, So really kind of just try to think through it and how we could provide a graphic that could help people understand how, yes, there's produce coming from our producers into the food hub out into the market, and then the markets are paying us for that food that we give back to the farmers, but yet some of that money is going down into our outreach programs. It's obviously not enough to fund those programs. So coming from the bottom, we have these donations to fund the rest of the program's operating budgets. And then the side columns are obviously just our basic stats, you know, on what we're doing in the community with our producers. I had mentioned to Sydney something I would like to do, and if there's interest, is to strip this down and work with our designers. So this could be something that other nonprofit food hubs could use, and kind of make it their own. You could use your own color palette, obviously drop in your own logos and graph, you know, icons and stats and things like that. But if anyone thinks this tells a good story, let me know. Prior to that, I'd worked with that same designer to create this food shed map. We feel pretty fortunate, you know, food grows where water flows. And we have 2 watersheds in Tahoe, one running to the east on the Truckee River, and one going to the west is the Yuba River. And predominant of what we, you know, do source from is from the Yuba River watershed. This is inside our warehouse. This is our retail space, the pharmacy. You know, we utilize this space, you know, on warehouse nights. I think it doesn't look quite so immaculate. But you know, we try and make it look pretty when the shop's open. So you get an idea of what that looks like. And during Christmas, had this, you know, got to do the photo shoots and the team building, you know, outings and all those things. I was worried this was gonna. Okay, so maybe I have a video I'm gonna show. It's from the pandemic, but it gives you the scale of the where. Oh yeah, this is Hubster. This is our mascot. I had this costume made at some point. It still lives. I pull it out every now and then. You know, it's my alter ego. That's not me. That's an employee. Okay, let's see if this will play. So I'll leave the volume off. I made this for farmers, you know, just so they could kind of see the scale of what we were doing during the pandemic. I started at the back of the warehouse. I'll start it. Why not just give you a quick perspective? Okay, so here we are in the back of the warehouse, where we're building our wholesale orders. You can tell we were definitely really staffed up during these times. You know, lots of things staged in different places. It is about the same time of year, actually. It was like in September. Here we're going into our cooler where we like basically is our grab and go, as we call it. It's when we're doing all the custom orders. Those sticky notes say what's in the box, and we can pull a bag of carrots or you know, a bunch of carrots. These are our like CSA boxes on the right, our harvest boxes as we call them. And then you can see how we utilize pretty much every square inch on warehouse night. So that is what I have to say.
Susie, that is amazing. We're starting to collect some questions in the chat, and I think what we're going to do is we'll hold all the questions until after Tracy is gone, and then we'll just open it up, and I'll make sure that the chat questions get surfaced as well.
I stop sharing. You don't need to see my.
I'm so tickled by, honestly, that video, because I've been in a lot of our hubs, and I can say that we all look so very similar, and it is, I don't know, I think it's both very cute and very wonderful that, you know, we all have sort of this funky cold storage arrangement, and there's food everywhere. There's never quite enough tables, and there's, you know, there's things tucked away on rolling racks in the corner that you're waiting to get at. And I think all of us can probably relate to the chaos of pack out day. So it's really fun to see, you know, some more developed hubs in sort of the scale appropriate similar state. So thank you for bringing that to us. All right, Tracy, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I've had some challenges over here. I dropped off for a bit, but I'm back, and I'm going to attempt to share the screen. Although, let's see how this goes. All right, well, I'm already challenged again.
If it's easier for you to email it to me,
Oh, I think I just have to download it out of Drive and put it on my desktop, which I didn't do.
Should we go ahead? Do you want a minute or two to get that sorted, Tracy, and we can maybe clear a couple of the questions that are sitting in the chat with Susie?
Sure, I think it's going to happen quickly.
Okay, I just don't want to have you in a state of like, we're staring at you desperately.
It's already happening. I don't understand. Let's see. I am challenged. So sure, take a question. And who am I going to email something to?
You can email it to me at info@ocfsn.org.
Oh man, I would have been prepared.
Do you just want me to start on these questions then, Sydney?
Yeah, so we had a couple from Ken that were,
Yep.
What were the roadblocks for building the geodesic dome? We can clear that one, I think, pretty quickly.
So, well, besides working through your town's building process, that's the biggest holdup. Growing spaces out of Pagosa Springs, they've got a kit. It takes 3 days for it to go up. You do some prep work, excavation and things like that, and leveling your ground and all of that. But, building it is super fast. It's just, the process of finding hopefully donated land and then working through the building process and then the funding. And is this distribution piece financially self-sustaining? Well, I think that's a question for all of us. Is the distribution piece financially self-sustaining?
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, I would have said no, but that definitely put us into, I felt like we could start paying people, proper wages, and, benefits for full time. I mean, I'm sometimes kind of like, I don't know how I got through those first few years for, what I was paying people and all part-time, and my 2 drivers worked for us for 5 years. So I just feel really fortunate. But now I feel like it is sustainable. And part of me stepping down was to build sustainability and look to the next generation and create that space for them to come in and take over, with me helping through that succession plan and being an advisor to that process. So it looks like you're ready, Trace.
Really?
Okay, I'll keep going. We can need to capture cues, okay, blah, blah, blah. Curiously, why you chose to distribute the fresh produce yourself rather than donate or sell the produce to the local food bank. Okay, so that's because they were actually really hard to work with. That is, for years we did actually. So I can't tell the whole story in that amount of time, but for probably 5 years we did. We would tell our farmers, hey, if you got extra food, we'll then we weren't neighbors, we would drive it over. So every week we were donating food. Our farmers would have excess and we would, drive it over to the food pantry. It's, they're not a food bank technically, they're a food pantry. We would take it over to them. I got grants for a couple years where we had money where we could actually buy, we could buy the food and know that every week we are going to be able to distribute fresh food to the food pantry. Then they consolidated with 3 other nonprofits dealing with family resources and things like that. I don't know if it was the best, thing, because things really kind of started to kind of fall apart, and it was just became really hard to like work with them. And it's like, oh, we can't take your food this week. And then actually said like, hey, let's do like these boxes with fresh produce. Like, how could we make this happen? And like, oh, I don't know. And so when the pandemic hit, it's like, okay, well, we're tired of trying to work with you on this. And there's people in need, and most of what you have is processed food, and people need fresh produce. And so it really was just out of necessity. If you know anything about World Central Kitchen, part of the reason why he does what he does is because it was like, wait a second, why is it taking a week for us to get into these disaster areas, provide people in need food? It's kind of like that. It was like, actually, our food bank closed for like somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks at the beginning of the pandemic. It was just like, like, what? Because they were like held to regulations. And so even more reason why we had to start our Giving Box program, because so many people were out of work and not knowing what to do. So it just kind of grew from there. And we continue to work with our food bank. It's gotten better, management's gotten better, and we're back at being able to donate food to their boxes while still being able to maintain, because a lot of people don't know the food bank does boxes, and we now have this whole other group of people, get there when you're food insecure, you don't even know your resources available to you. So it's just finding another way to address that need in the community.
Thank you. I bet we're going to have a bunch of questions about that relationship in an ongoing way further down in the chat, but it sounds like we are ready with Tracy's presentation.
Thank you. And so I'll have to ask you to advance, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Capay Valley Farm Shop is located in Esparto, California, which is at the base of the Capay Valley. The Capay Valley is about 6 small towns. Total population in the valley is about 2,000 people. And most of the land is dedicated to growing food, with the exception of some cannabis that happened for a minute there. The valley has been quite protective of its agricultural land, and that is part of what spawned the food hub. And click, please. I've been at Capay Valley Farm Shop for 5 years. About a year ago, we moved into this new facility, which is on the historic Esparto train depot property. The woman who owns the property offered to build us a building to our specs, which was pretty gosh darn amazing. Also 4,000 square feet, like Susie's space. In our private building, or prior building rather, we didn't have a loading dock, which you can see the dock there. And if you want to advance, that would be swell. Thank you. This is the inside of the warehouse. We have additional storage space that we didn't have in our old space. We have a loading dock, which is amazing. We have insulation, which we didn't used to have, and you might be able to see in the bottom left-hand picture a very large 8-foot wide fan on the ceiling, manufactured by a company called Big Ass Fans. And when you are outfitting your facility, if you have $6,000 to throw to a fan, I highly recommend it. Although it is really hot here, and maybe you all don't need that, but the insulation coupled with the fan is really helped us so much. We open up and pull in the cool air, and then we close it down and use the fan to keep produce and people cool while we're working. And we have a little office in there. We also didn't have a bathroom at our old facility, so we're really happy to have a bathroom. We have hot water at our hand washing sink, which we didn't used to have. So you can advance the slide, please. So Capay Valley Farm Shop has been around since 2007. And as I said, it was a growth of the community coming together to say, how do we keep this land in agriculture and not have, any development, or even just people from the Bay Area buying 80-acre parcels to have as summer places, how to keep it viable, how to keep the farms viable, how to help the farms grow together, to collaborate more. And so Capay Valley Farm Shop, it's our deceiving name is because originally there was a retail store. That didn't last very long, less than a year, way before my time. And then when that didn't work out, and that was a real estate problem that didn't work out well, there was an attempt to do like pop-up markets, eventually working with tech companies to do multi-farm box programs delivered to work sites, not wanting to compete with the farms in the valley's existing household CSA programs. And you could click, please, for me. We are a for-profit enterprise and farmer and community owned. There are, I think, 30-something shareholders. And so for-profit social enterprise owned by the producers. So what this shows you is where we're aggregating. Those two hearts are one Capay Valley Farm Shop, and the other is Full Belly Farm, where I live. And then the big circle is We are not a cooperative, Sydney. We're a for-profit corporation, not
Thank you.
cooperative. Yeah. So the big circle is our current aggregation area, and this little dotted circle you can see around the Bay Area and San Jose, that's where we were distributing pre-pandemic. So our pandemic pivot was to offer our services all over Northern California. And so that includes off to the east, where we cross dock with Tahoe Food Hub. So we don't go all the way to Tahoe to make deliveries there. And then in the Northwest to Ukiah, where we're doing sales with the Mendo Lake Food Hub, and then to the north of San Francisco and west to Petaluma, where we're doing sales with Feed Sonoma, another food hub. That was one of our biggest growth areas in the pandemic, was selling to other food hubs, and also at the beginning to selling to farms. So while all those operations increased their CSA numbers and different kinds of box program opportunities, we declined any box program opportunity because we had done that already and knew that it wasn't profitable and knew that it burnt out people. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we lost a few people and we didn't have the people to do it. So we didn't do it. And that turned out to be really great because the folks that were doing it didn't have the volume that they needed. And so we could sell to them. Farming here happens year round. That's another advantage that we have in this place. Let's see, there was a question about FTE. We are shorthanded always, and that is a real strain. We are down 2 full-time people right now, and we're working hard to find people to hire. Agriculture doesn't pay as well as people would like it to. And people don't like to pay as much for their food as they should. So if you could advance the slide, please. This is just to show you what a broad range of products we offer. We sell a lot of olive oil. Those are olives in the top right. We do sell meat and eggs, no dairy. We do have a lot of value-added products and a wide range of fruits and vegetables. We also sell honey and rice and custom milled flour and cornmeal. And those things all sell really well. The olive oil is like a real great product for us. We are in the Winton Nation here. The Patwin people grow olives, and the mill here is really state of the art and beautiful and produces a lot of olive oil. And I would say that we even have customers that are our customers primarily because of olive oil. They'll order a regular store of olive oil and just add a few things that are really, fantastic at the moment. Let's see. That's the label. Thanks for just doing that. I really appreciate that. This is the label that was developed at the beginning of the Capay Valley Farm Shop for branding things coming out of this valley. It's sort of taken a rest and is potentially heading into a revival. And click, please. And we sell a lot to tech company kitchens and corporate food service. Beginning of the pandemic, we were very over concentrated in those kinds of kitchens. So the universities and the tech companies all closed. And we had one customer on March 9th of 2020, and that was an online grocer, and their sales grew enormously. And that was really a stabilizing force for us while we looked around for new customers. And there were pandemic-induced programs where the state and FEMA were supporting keeping restaurant staff working and producing meals for senior home delivery programs. So we got introduced to new restaurants that way. Some of them have carried through past the funding, some have not. And we also found our way into a bunch of more high-end bodegas like corner stores in the city. You could advance the slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tracking we do and how we monitor our systems and work toward improving our sales and our efficiencies. This is an annual document that we create that is goals. It's patched together 2 slides there. We look at this quarterly at our in-person team meetings. This next one is also, if you could just pause here a second, this next one is another one that we look at just quarterly. The first one, the goals is with the staff, and this one we look at with the board. And this is something that if anyone is interested in this tool, I'm happy to share it with you. It's an Excel file that, as you can see, was put together by Iowa State. And you enter all this information about your food hub, and it does all the magic to tell you things about your financial health. And this tool has been really great. Happy to share that. So you can go ahead and click. Thank you. This is a document that we started during the pandemic, primarily because of that over-concentration in tech company kitchens and having to find our way to new marketplaces. We have been tracking our monthly sales, and then we look at them sales percentage by buyer category, sales by region, because we expanded our regions. And then we look at sales by product. In the summertime, we sell a lot of cut flowers. Different seasons are different kinds of demands on product. And then we track our active accounts. We're counting every month how many accounts we have. And so this we look at monthly, and click again, please. And this is something we look at every week. This is our dashboard. We have a weekly team meeting, and different people on staff have responsibilities for updating this spreadsheet. And we look at this together every week. I don't think this is, 2019. So we're tracking our total sales in the week. We have a category called grower services. We rent storage space. We rent our trucks. We buy packaging in volume, and we store it and sell it to producers as they need it at cost. So that's what the grower services line is. And then we count our weekly invoices and our truck runs, and we average those things. We track shorts, and we track the number of incidents. So shorts, we track things we've oversold. We've tracked things that we didn't pick up at the farm that we thought we would, things that are in and out of our control. And then the operations and orders incident spreadsheet, that is something that took me quite a while to come to. We were having a lot of repetitive errors occurring. Our availability list is generally between 300 and 400 entries on the list, because we have every farm list anything they want at whatever pack they want and whatever price they want. So right now it's tomato season. Our list might have 35 tomato entries, and 5 of them might be mixed heirlooms, and 5 of them might be sun golds from 5 different producers. And then there's all the single varietal packs. So given the number of items that we list, there are countless opportunities to make a mistake every day. All of us can make a mistake, entering an order, pulling items off a pallet to pack a pallet for a customer. And we wanted to look at how these mistakes just kept happening. And I'm a real protector when it comes to like shaming and blaming and making people feel bad for making mistakes, because really there is no way around making mistakes. If you want to click now, please do. So we now have an operations and orders incident spreadsheet, and that is this lower one where whenever a mistake is made, we track it and we talk about it on our weekly team call. So this is one of the documents we pull up during that call. And I think I also made it old and tried not to have too many names on there. But it's where it would say that at the end of my run, I had a flat of strawberries and I don't know where they should have gone. And I must not have checked off invoices well enough when I was pulling things off the truck. And we talk about that stuff. And then the top one I mentioned is our shorts. So that one is preloaded with drop downs to fill quickly. And we're tracking all of our lost opportunities. On the operations and orders incident spreadsheet, we have 2 columns for expenses. One almost always says time and credibility, and the other is for dollars. And those dollars get moved onto both the shorts dollars and the incident dollars get moved onto the dashboard, and we're tracking where we're losing money. And you could click, please. Thank you. I have no more slides, no clicking necessary. I am happy to answer questions. We're business to business. We don't deliver to households. We created a new category at the beginning of the pandemic when everything was closed that we called sheltering chefs. So while all the chefs were at home sheltering in place, we offered to deliver to their houses in case quantities if they wanted to pack boxes for their neighbors. And quite a few did that, and 2 are still doing that. This long while later, we make a weekly delivery to 2 different chefs' houses, and they all take turns packing the boxes. Otherwise, we didn't have the capacity to pack boxes. So we are starting to pick up with the tech companies again. And as I said, we've diversified our customer base. And that's my talking as fast as I can.
Thank you, Tracy. That I am in awe of your tracking and your metrics right now, and I hope we're all in awe of them. I'm going to peel us back a little bit further and start pulling some of the questions out of the chat. Lauren had sort of a block of questions it came up during Susie's presentation, but it definitely applies to you as well, Tracy. They were about marketing. One was, in terms of marketing dollars, none of us have much in the way of budget. Can you either and or both of you talk a little bit about what have been some of the best investments you've made in marketing dollars? And then her second question had specifically to do with the graphics that Susie brought to the group and how they're being used. Are they printed? Are they sent out digitally? So if we could maybe cover that little bit of marketing stuff, and then we'll dig back into the big chunk of operational questions that are coming up now.
Well, I have almost nothing to say on the marketing side, except this is where you're going to see the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit food hub. I mean, Susie's got gorgeous stuff and always has. And you have a designer who I think might be really generous with you, and you're able to, we don't have that kind of stuff.
It's out there. No, I think, Tracy, we need to go into business, because like, if you can do the financial side and I can do the marketing side, I'm like, okay, this is the difference between us. Like, that's like, I'm all like pictures, and it's I'm like, wow, this is probably a good reason why I stepped down, because everything you just saw her do, I'm not doing enough of that, because so I want to take the Tracy course on the dashboard. That looks amazing. As far as marketing goes, I mean, I even kind of said it started with that logo. So I come from a marketing background. We had our style guidelines and our color palette. It hasn't changed, and it just kind of grown from there. Storytelling is a big, I think, for-profit or nonprofit, I think it's an important part. We're all educating our consumers, and those kinds of resources are helpful and useful in communicating that message. I probably got some pretty good deals, I think, at the start, and occasionally still do, but I work with probably 3 different graphic designers. What's helpful is having, like, I have it in my head and I can do a really bad sketch, and then I can give it to someone, and it's pretty much a one and done. Fortunately, good communication with that graphic designer, so there isn't much back and forth. So whether it's you or someone else on your team who can communicate that and work with the graphic designer, you can move through that process pretty quickly. And that graphic designer is going to reward you by not like countless edits, and it's mainly just me. I'm not working with, like, I'm kind of showing it here and there to some other people, make sure I'm on point, but it's not like this elaborate 6-month process of back and forth and back and forth. It's kind of like, see it, get it done, okay, and then we're already moving on to the next one, because you got to keep it fresh and exciting. But yeah, I mean, the marketing, you gotta spend money to make money a little bit, but it's not to say, I mean, I've always taken the approach of keep my head down, be really frugal, and it's going to work out. So we're still really conscientious about where we're spending that money, but I think marketing is a really critical piece, whether it's to grow sales or to raise awareness.
And I appreciate both of you explaining on that. And I want to sort of tie a bow around it and then table it for a deeper discussion at some point at another time. But one of the things this group of hubs has developed is a number of them have been successful getting grants that will support them developing a whole bunch of assets, collateral, as they say, stuff. Oh, table tents, oh, posters, oh, this, oh, that. But then the question is, what do you do with it? So we're interested not just in potentially what they could do with it, but if a food hub in some other part of the state is going to take the great stuff that was developed in Central Oregon and adapt it to them, you know, how should they use it for their markets? And I think that's, how do you squeeze every like penny out of the investment you've made in the stuff and how you use it? And that is not something we have time to get into today, but that's that question that Christy asked about, how are you distributing marketing products? So I'm just like putting a little dot in having that a nuts and bolts type conversation like that. Now Sydney can go back to all the other questions.
And then I just want to add one quick thing that also kind of goes hand in hand with the graphic design brief and what you were saying, Susie, on like the really clear communication. I also dropped into our shared notes a short little list of what a really effective graphic design brief would look like and the key components. That was something that I have a friend of mine who does freelance work, who worked in PR for years and years, had shared with me when we were looking for graphics design support.
Thank you.
Well, I'll go back to mention, if anyone did like that infographic to explain how a nonprofit food hub works, like, I don't want, that to be hidden under a rock if other people feel like that's a useful communication tool. I think our graphic designer could strip that down, and then whoever wanted to use it with whether it's you guys or on the East Coast could pay her a much more nominal fee to build that. That actually only cost, I think, $700 to get that designed. And for what it's going to provide us, that's a pretty good deal. So I think you'd be, pretty surprised by how much that stuff can actually cost and still be affordable.
Well, thank you. I'm going to dig into some of the operational questions that are popping up. Caitlin from FoodWeb had a question about your software and how you're using it. She is curious to hear more about software you use for ordering, aggregation, and distribution.
We're using Local Food Marketplace and have been the whole time I've been at Capay Valley Farm Shop, and I used it in other places before I got here, and I've been really happy with it. We do not have producers upload their availability. We do that. Our purchasing manager speaks with the farms twice a week and puts up the availability, and we do not have our customers use it either. We enter the orders. We were looking to make it customer facing at the beginning of the summer or late spring, hoping to do sales within our community. In our very agricultural community, there is nowhere to buy food. We were only going to offer things by the case, but we didn't end up being able to have the time to do it because we're too short staffed to get that together. But we've been happy with LFM.
Susie, what are you using?
Well, we're still on Local Orbit, but we are migrating to Local Food Marketplace. It's bittersweet for sure. In many ways, I feel like Local Orbit has the potential to be a better software, and it was about to go under at the beginning of the pandemic, but it was too much to think about migrating at that point. So us and one other food hub basically took it over and have kept it alive for the past, 2.5 years. But without enough financial support and the right IT team, and we work with a group in India, and they're on a different time zone, the writing was just on the wall. So we're in that process. Hopefully we're going to be moving over in the next couple weeks. We started the process in June. But I want to miss it. It's really streamlined, like Local Food Marketplace. I like it, but it's almost too much, I feel like. And Local Orbit has a really pretty user interface, and it's really intuitive, and it's really simple and streamlined. So I don't know, we're going to find out, but it's going to be great to have a real IT team. And I know Amy and her crew seem to do a really, really good job on that. And that's why we're moving over for the most part.
And Susie, maybe someday we'll use the inner hub connection that LFM has built.
Yeah.
There is a question from Abigail asking if either one of you have had professional training on food hub operations.
Abigail, I'm the former executive director of Rogue Valley Farm to School where you work. And in my last year there, I went to the University of Vermont's Food Hub Management program before I left the Valley and that job.
I recognized your name, and it's to finally meet you.
Oh my gosh, that's Tracy. I didn't know you had super short hair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Hi again. Just
Hi.
realized.
I definitely had no professional training. I had been working for an environmental film festival, and I, was ready for a change. And I kind of did the drastic thing of like quitting my job and renting my house out with the intention of doing an independent study. Going back to school for a sustainability degree just sounded like, slow and painful and poor. And I'm like, if I do it my other way, which is ad hoc my own, master's degree, I'm gonna, still be poor, anyway. So I did basically a 2-year independent study on local food systems, traveling around, interviewing people, taking courses and workshops. And I kept a blog, which was kind of like my, rolling thesis paper. And it was really helpful. It's where I distilled all the information I was learning. And I can still remember when I first heard the word food hub, and I knew the problem was like, okay, how do we help farms get their food to market? And then someone said food hub in this one conference I went to, and I was like, what? There's a thing for what I've been thinking about, and the rest is kind of history from there. So I definitely took, I was working during that time, patching it together. I mean, it was pretty, dark days financially, but, didn't have any kids and wasn't married. So like, what else am I going to do?
I think maybe a follow-up question to that would be to both of you. What do you wish you had known going into your food hubbing lives that you now know? Or what kind of training do you wish you had had before embarking on this food hubbing lifestyle?
I had the naive notion that coming to a for-profit food hub that was profitable and in its 10th year meant I wasn't working at a startup.
Good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. I gotta think about that one, because there's parts of me, if I knew now, I may not have done it. But I feel like that the way I did it is part of the success. It was, a lot of self-sacrifice for those first couple of years of myself, until I could finally get to a point. And so I feel really grateful that I do have now the people. So those days that were really, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not sustainable. I don't know how I can do this by myself. And even with the small staff I had. But now that we're at this point, if you can persevere and get through that, it is pretty rewarding to now be able to look and see. So we'll table that one. I would like to think about, okay, what could, because I get questions from people like, I want to start a food hub. What do I do? What is the best, course of action to do that? I wouldn't recommend doing it maybe the way I did, but I don't think taking, getting 10 people together and focus groups and, talking about it, it'll never happen. So there's got to be a bridge somewhere between someone willing to put a lot of work in, but also making it sustainable at the same time from the start. So I'm gonna get back to you on that.
What other operational questions do we have floating around out there? I have one for Tracy. Tracy, it looked like you had a huge region that you were serving. How are you keeping that profitable? Are your orders really large? Like, it looks like you were going a lot of miles in your trucks to me.
Yeah, well, we had to relook at our minimum because our minimum pre-pandemic was 250 to the Bay Area, but we had to we created a very complicated spreadsheet to help us determine what our minimums are based on miles and hours. And so our minimums vary by region. And then we're working with a couple of our farms to share trucking. So sometimes, like with Ukiah, for instance, there's really nowhere else to go over there unless you come back the long way and go through Santa Rosa. We don't have any accounts there, but some of the farms do. So we'll pay the farm to take our delivery there. And it's a flat fee. And sometimes we take their deliveries for them and charge them the same flat fee. We would like to do better at sharing trucking with the farms. And, it's the same thing as carpooling. Somebody's always got a reason why it doesn't work. But we're trying. And the flat fee that we were using, Christy, is $100 a pallet. But yeah, like when we go to Penryn, well, and we also limit our delivery days. Like tomorrow when we cross dock to take stuff to Susie's Food Hub, we will do deliveries in Sacramento on that day, but we try not to go into Sacramento on Mondays. We try to have both trucks going to the Bay Area. We have a minimum. We want at least $2,000 worth of stuff on the truck before it rolls. Yeah, and we haven't always been as efficient as we're gaining efficiencies now. At the beginning of the pandemic, we just needed buyers.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions floating around out there? I could ask like 500
Well,
of
there's
you,
one
so I could
question
hog.
about for-profit to nonprofit from Kim Johnson. So I don't know, it was kind of, we started as a nonprofit. And that was, again, a very optimistic approach that, if you support your local public radio and your local watershed, you're going to support your local food system and food shed, and that the community is going to build this food hub. And also knowing that, okay, it's already more expensive food and we got to mark it up a little bit. Hopefully the community can offset that with, grants and donations. Because I knew, especially with just myself, we were going to need some extra support. So it was kind of two-sided. One, it was like, I want the community to be really behind this for this to be successful and anticipate them donating to this project and this program, but also like, we're going to need, to get off the ground, we're going to need additional support. And as a nonprofit, we're going to have greater access to grants and donations. But then a couple of years, 2 years into it, went to a Slow Money conference and was just like, I had 2 board members with me and they're like walking away like, oh, I'm going to invest in this local food company and this local food. I'm like, you know what? You haven't even made a donation to the food hub this year. And you're about to spend $10,000 on this like startup food business. And it made me realize, I'm like, I don't know, do these social impact investors need to feel like they're going to get like 0.01% return on their investment? So maybe a for-profit would have been a better, path to go down. And we almost thought about spinning off the programs into the nonprofit, and then have the buying and selling be, for-profit and proceeds from it. I think I'm glad we didn't in the end, but it is a really good conversation when you're starting up, and if you're early enough, it may be worth thinking about, do you spin it off, a portion of it, like the transactional piece, into a B Corp, potentially? That's what we were looking at. We were like, maybe we'll get better investments, not donations, but investments in what we're doing if we're a B Corp. And then people can see how the proceeds, so basically it's still an earned income model, but it's broken out into a for-profit and a nonprofit. So.
Cool, thank you. Lauren has a question about your farmers.
Yeah, and I think 20 years ago when I was starting being a graduate student at UC Berkeley, I used to buy from Full Belly at the farmers market there, and they had been in business for a long time. So I know not everybody is Full Belly there, Trace, but a lot of farmers are very experienced in what they grow, how they market. And I'm wondering for you and for you, Susie, where you are, what kind of support do your farmers need? Because a lot of our food hubs in Oregon are trying to not only help experienced farmers get into different markets like wholesale instead of direct, but also really help those farmers move from a farm direct model. And a lot of times the hubs run into volume challenges where, oh, if we just had more farmers and just some more product, and then we could get market of choice interested or whatever it is. So I'm curious what you do with your farmers.
So you mentioned Full Belly. Yeah, they've been farming for almost 40 years, over 400 acres. We have another farm that's almost that size and been around almost that long, River Dog. And what I really wanted when I was looking for a food hub was I really wanted a couple of anchor farms who would be really supportive of the small farms transitioning away from direct to consumer. And we're a long ways, about 100 miles from San Francisco. So I sometimes go with Full Belly to market on Saturdays to Palo Alto, and that's 5 hours of truck time. So to help the farmers not go to market is a really big goal of mine. I understand markets. I love markets. They really help farmers in the beginning, but then when they start to be really exhausting and a lot of time off the farm. So we do a lot of support to farmers that I work partly in working with you, Lauren, at OSU on how to scale to be a mid-scale producer, how to get out of direct to consumer. So we do offer a lot of that support, be it helping them with packaging, helping them with pack sizes, helping them figure out how to establish a proper label, helping them put together their availability lists. We do a lot of that hand-holding. And then our producers, River Dog, Full Belly, the bigger ones, we also have Durst Organic Growers, which is about 1,000 acres, and you'll see their stuff on the store. Like right now, you would probably see their watermelons and cherry tomatoes throughout Oregon. Those producers are really invested in helping the smaller producers scale. So they're lending equipment, they're lending expertise. We're having annual grower meetings. We have a listserv that we host for the producers to ask each other for who knows how to do this, who has this I can borrow. And when I notice that listserv is quiet, I post something so that I remind folks that it exists. And I hope I answered your question. We have a very wide range of scale from 1 acre to 1,000 acres. And when we put our list together, if someone's price is coming in looking a little bit awkward, we talk to the producer about it. Like, what could you do? We had a hard meeting with our producers a couple years ago to say, like, okay, that tech gravy train was awesome. And it was great to just add our margin to whatever you wanted to offer it at. But that's not our reality anymore. And unfortunately, the farmers are bearing that all day long. Someone asking them to sell it for less. We try not to be that voice, but what we do offer our buyers is, of course, that if they're preferencing the smaller farms and it can't be met, we do have the larger farms to turn to. And we take the time to educate our buyers to let them know, like, we're going to preference this farm. Is that okay with you if it's a couple bucks a case higher and we're going to get it from you from a smaller farm? And most of the time they're going to say yes. And we're just transparent about it. This is why we think you should buy from this farm. And we let farms offer 1 case of okra, 1 case of painted serpents. We don't mind that at all. And we'll sell that first.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess I would iterate what Tracy said, just jumping from where she just left off is, yeah, you know, a lot of distributors aren't good, and I'm sure you guys are all the same way. You know, we're going to offer, you know, farmer has a case of something, we'll sell it. Really no quantities too small. And for starting Tahoe Food Hub, you know, and looking at where, you know, our food system was and the local food system, it was like, okay, if we really want to change the game here, we got to think beyond CSAs and farmers markets. Like, we need to be an alternative to the traditional food system for these farmers, so they don't have to be doing it all themselves, doing their own marketing, going to more farmers markets. So I think Tracy was saying something similar. If I have a farmer that says we're doing one less farmers market, that is like the biggest compliment you can get, is like, okay, we're doing our job. I feel like we actually work with less farmers than we did when we first started. And it's not to say many have gone maybe out of business, but they started as kind of small farms wanting to try it out, and then they kind of faded off. But we've gone bigger with fewer farms, and it's definitely worked out better that way, because they all now get really big orders. What was the other part of some of that question related to farms?
It was just about the kind of support that you offer them.
Oh
kind
yeah,
of what
so
kind of
we've
hand-holding.
done prior to the pandemic, we did an annual farmer chef gathering. Have done a couple solo farm ones where we did like a workshop on foods. We've done two or three food safety workshops, a crop planning workshop, and for probably 4 years in a row, maybe 5, we did a farmer chef gathering, either in Tahoe where the farmers would come up, or we would get a bus and take the chefs down, and we do a tour of farms and have a lunch and a meet and greet. Now it's been a few years, and I'm hoping the new team will take advantage of that, and start doing a gathering again, because I think those things are really important. And maybe we don't do as many in-person workshops, but that's where our hope is, our Farmer Resiliency Fund. So farms don't have to work through all the red tape. As a nonprofit, we can raise the money, we can raise the donations. And then instead of having to apply for some big federal or state grant, we know those farmers. We know their story. We know their struggles. They can write a simple 1-pager to us and be like, yeah, that's totally worth it. You need $1,000 for that, new fencing, here you go. Or hold some aside. We had a farmer break his leg and he had to hire 2 part-time people. They weren't expecting that. So we're going to donate to their support. So there's kind of like an emergency fund within our Farmer Resiliency Fund, and then one that's kind of more kind of micro grant driven.
Very cool. Very cool. Kristen Penner had a question about, it sounds to her, and probably to a lot of us, that you have some dedicated sales folks that are really spending time with your producers and with your buyers. How did you find those folks, and what kinds of qualifications, when you are looking for them, are you looking for?
That is, as Tracy mentioned too, and as we're all like struggling with staff. So I promoted 2 directors to co-executive directors, and one is, I feel like a younger version of me, total, she's a go-getter, great with our farmers. And then our other director, he's meant to be more with our chefs. And it's definitely the side when I've brought in people over the years to kind of help assist me, do sales calls, stop in, talk with chefs. And as we all know, I mean, it is like, it's like auditioning, it's like you have to take so much beating, with these chefs, because they're just like, and then you think you got them, and then they don't order, they order $20 and then they stop ordering, they leave. I mean, it's exhausting. I mean, and it's not for everybody, but you just got to keep staying on it. It's the only way is to keep, get your face in front of those chefs. But yeah, I haven't not been able to find, and even my new team, they start off strong and then they realize, wow, this is really defeating because I'm not getting the response I thought I would get. Because you do kind of think like, oh, if we build it, they will come, right? But it's not always the case. So that's probably something I will retain a little bit, is in helping, with some of our wholesale accounts, because it does help in those situations for them to talk to the founder to kind of keep them engaged, but hopefully not forever. Hopefully we will find just the right person to keep that going.
Tracy, do you have any input here? I feel like you probably have
It's
some
pretty
experience with this.
challenging. I'm doing sales right now because we don't have a salesperson. We are in the hiring process, and we are looking at paying someone more than we've ever paid anyone. And we're in the middle of a big decision here. We have had full-time sales since January of 2021. 2 people have come and gone from that position. The first one we hired, we knew was a short-term person, but hiring is really challenging, especially I think in this rural place. If you had to move here, you have to be prepared to live in a yurt or maybe in a trailer or a shed or something. There's nowhere to live out here. So that makes it hard. And it's a good hour's drive from Sacramento and a couple hours from the Bay. We're looking at hiring someone in the city, which we haven't done before, and see what that does. It's hard. And we're a harvest to order model. So that means the salesperson has to be really good at bad news. And that can really wear people out, having to say, give them a message and then an hour later, another message. Oh, not only do we not have the flat of heirlooms, now we don't have the case of Charlene melons for you either. Like it's hard.
Do we have any other questions?
There was something about resiliency fund. I can get that for you guys. It's still a little bit in development in kind of the succession piece. That's been part of what my new co-executive director has been meant to be building, but it's summertime, it's busy. We're transitioning to a new software. So, things like that do kind of start to fall. So we've just been kind of doing like assessing on the fly when a farmer is in need and making a donation as needed. But hopefully by November, we should have those guidelines in place and be able to have an online form for farmers to apply. But like I said, still have that kind of emergency fund, because like if someone breaks their leg, we're not gonna, could you write a grant for that, please? And include an x-ray.
Right. Well, and with this, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Oregon Community Food Systems Network, which is this broader network of nonprofit organizations in Oregon, and the Food Hub group is kind of one of those working groups. OCFSN actually administered a disaster relief fund with public dollars that came from the legislature, and we absolutely built on Community Alliance of Family Farmers model. So they gave us a lot of guidance in how they were doing their, disaster relief starting right when COVID started. So I was curious, and we can talk about this in November, but I'm curious about, you're going to maintain your own fund for your own farmers in your own place. And then there will continue to be these statewide efforts that would be able to bring in different philanthropic or public dollars. So that is a useful thing to discuss also.
Definitely.
I would like to say quickly, I came on a little late because our internet was down here at the Sunrise Center, but I also left my phone in somebody else's truck. So it was one of those days, but I finally got my phone and the internet was up. I appreciate hearing, and I missed some of it, and then I'm kind of piecing some things together. First and foremost, I would say those few seconds of quiet or silence, it was golden. A couple of minutes ago, it got quiet just for 3-5 seconds. It was quiet. It's like, okay. And to me, that was golden. Not that we couldn't talk, but people were evidently assessing and doing some things on the inside. And then it kind of kicked back up. And the second thing is, we have been hearing about, quote, the reset or the big reset, or all that, okay? Community-wise, we need to literally do what we're doing, because we have experienced what are global, what are regional, states and all that food systems won't supply, can't supply. Okay, the reality is what we're talking about is exactly what is needed to make sure that we don't find ourselves again in our communities depending on things outside of our control. And that's what I love, and I love. I was semi-surprised when I heard California come up, because I'm from California. It was like, California to me is like on the other side of the world. It's a continent within itself. Okay, that's just how I think about California right now. It's like, California, oh, so you went out of the country, huh? Even though they're next to Oregon. But I love what I'm hearing. Your analogy, your paperwork, and your finances, like somebody else said, I would love to have something like that, even though we're a small hub here in Rockwood or Gresham. I give a high recommendation to what you guys are doing there.
Thanks.
Okay, don't be quiet too long. I get nervous when it's quiet if I speak.
Well, I can't type and talk at the same time. I can barely type on a good day. So if you catch me mid-comment, I'm in trouble. Willie, thank you for that observation. I think it is absolutely right that so many of us are doing this work because it feels really important to us in our communities and in our regions for lots and lots of different reasons. So thanks for bringing it back to, a serious place. Do we have any other questions kicking around out there for Susie and Tracy? Kim, looks like you got one.
Yeah, I just got one. I don't think it's a quick one, but maybe could you just speak a little, could you speak briefly to, Tracy, you mentioned renting your truck out as like a grower's service. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
Sure. We make our trucks available to the farms we work with. And right now we're renting our truck twice a week to a budding food hub, which feels a little tense sometimes. They're also renting our driver one day a week. So we're helping grow competition. And we're all going to work together. It's all going to be fine. But anyway, we rent our trucks when we're not using them. I think the flat fee is $115 a day. And then we need to give the information to the insurance company when their driver's driving. So we take a photocopy of their license, and then they bring the truck back as clean as it was when they took it and with as much gas as it had. And, it's hard to rent vehicles now more than ever. So we do have more demand than we used to. But we have little stretches of time where there's a farm that's like, you cannot deal without having a refrigerated truck out here. It's just not going to work. So when a truck is down, we'll rent a truck.
Thanks.
There's a couple of folks on this call, Tracy, that also do some convoluted truck rental and driver rental. So I think this is probably ringing a bell for folks.
Mm-hmm.
We're all struggling through, like, how do we share what we do? How do we do what we do it better, raise folks up, protect our own assets? It's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Do other folks have any questions?
I don't know if it's a question. I'm just, I love the idea, our food hub network is just sort of getting going. And so, the idea of bringing, for example, produce from Willamette Valley over here. I know we've talked about it, but it's great to see some models that we can look at. Because I need your produce. Please, everyone, bring me your produce. I have no produce in here.
Christy and I are both in short season climates, and both of us there might have been a little texting back and forth about our jealous natures towards your food that you have available in your hubs. You know, we don't have anything in January, February, March.
But I don't have anything
June.
right now. I have
Right?
farmers. It's a whole nother.
I have something on that could be helpful, and I feel like it's something that really, was a critical, point in the food hub. Was I had a restaurant be like, oh, hey, could you, they just were looking for more stuff, because if you don't have enough stuff, then people are going to be less likely to keep coming back because you don't have enough to warrant it. Obviously, we're never going to have everything a chef needs. We always tell them, start with us when you go to place your orders, and then move to the next, closest distributor. But a chef suggested, hey, could you ever, get some Northern California produce through a distributor that doesn't come up? They didn't come up to Tahoe. In this case, it was Tracy, don't hate me. We only used them for a year. We used NorCal produce, and so especially in winter, it just helped round it out. And all of a sudden, we had more on our market, and our farmers sold more because chefs were shopping more with us. So yes, the chefs were buying maybe stuff that was coming from this larger distributor. It was organic Northern California for local, organic Northern California produce. It wasn't within 100 miles, but it just made our market so much more robust. And then we moved to using veritable vegetable on all women owned, probably started kind of like a food hub down in the Bay many years ago. And now they were huge. And they, of course, they sell stuff organic from Mexico and all those things. But just being able to offer more consistently, especially like we should have beets right now, but nobody has beets, and chefs are expecting beets, and we've got chefs with beets on their menu, and now we don't have beets. And so now they're going to think we're not, capable. Well, we can fill in those gaps. And we would share that with our farmers during crop planning. We'd be like, this is what we're ordering from Veritable. This is your money. This is money on the table for you that you could be growing and selling to us, because it's what we need and where we're filling in gaps. So we always considered it using Veritable as filling gaps. Now, I don't know if you know this, Tracy, but we don't even use Veritable anymore right now. Pretty much Capay, it's 150 to 200 miles from us versus 300 to 400 miles. So it's great. We're closing that gap, or filling those gaps with farms closer, and with farms that aren't that as far away. So I would just recommend looking at those things if you feel like you're struggling with supply, to get you over a hurdle. It can be a really great way. Don't feel like you're like, oh, I'm just gonna sabotage my local farms. No, you're gonna help them get bigger orders because you're making your market better.
And you all have OGC, not UNFI.
Right.
Which is
we've never
who owns
used it.
NorCal.
We've never used it. We've never used UNFI.
UNFI owns NorCal. Consolidation.
Oh, no, that was before.
Right
no,
now.
we worked with the original owners before UNFI took it over.
Okay.
So yeah, that was before UNFI took it over. But it was only one. It was like a winter. It was a winter.
Susie, I love you.
But it opened my eyes to what you can do. It's like, oh, okay, this is how we could do it, and how we could make our market more robust. And it was immediate. Our farmers had bigger orders right away.
I mean, we do it too. We buy from JSM Organics down in Watsonville so that we can have berries on our list.
Mm-hmm.
We can't grow berries here, but just maybe for a week or two. It's too hot.
Yeah.
I think this is a really, really important point that Susie and Tracy are both making is, in building your market, having that consistency is key. And that is probably the only way you're going to convince your farmers to grow more for you, is if they know they have a sale.
Exactly.
And if the only way you're going to get to that sale is by having the consistency and securing that sale. So leveraging other suppliers can be a really important part of your business plan.
And it's very
putting this
transparent.
together.
Everybody can see, oh, this came from Veritable. We say, if it's organic, it's all organic, but that if it came from Veritable. So people can like, okay, I only want to shop super local, hyper local, and they can tell what's coming from further away. So transparency is a good part of it. You know, no one can fault you if you're super open and honest about it. You know, it's like, well, I'm not hiding anything.
Wow. All right, you guys. Somehow we are at our hour and a half. And Tracy and Susie, thank you so much for making yourselves so available to us. I think we'll probably have some follow-up questions. I can't thank you enough for the time. I know it's a big deal to get out of your hubs for this